Welcome to Speak for Change podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Pedersen. Our mission is to inspire and promote self-awareness, self-development, social justice, and human greatness. If you like what you hear, please give us an Apple Podcast review. They go specifically on Apple Podcast because it goes cross-platform. And if you want any merchandise, you could just go to speakforchangepodcast.therapies.com. Today is a special day. I actually have two guests with me today, which is awesome. All right, so the first guest is Lori Halliday, is the founder and executive director at Horse and Heart, a 501c3 charitable organization that focuses on natural horsemanship, equine experiential learning, equitation, and rewinding. She is also the CEO of Wise Horsewoman, where she is an avid life and congruency coach. Lori has 20 years of experience in natural horsemanship and has been certified equine experimental learning trainer for over 15 years. Her training in these techniques is underpinned by formal education and behavioral science, which include psychology, sociology, criminology, cultural anthropology, dance, experimental learning, and art. Wow, she is a voracious reader or student of movement and personal growth and vision, and an awesome reader. I've seen her post a lot of awesome books. Lori works with adults, children, and at-risk youth. She has also worked extensively in mental health field with adults and youth in institutional transitional living, group home, and independent living environments. That is an awesome description. Our second guest is Ella Halliday. She is a lifetime local to Santa Cruz, California. She has followed her joy into a career and life living symbiotically with animals. She spent her youth diving into different practices and fields of horsemanship, learning from friends, some of the best riders and horsemen in the world, and often gleaning the most important information from her students, horses, and moments of stillness. She is now a professional in the industry and is blessed to run an inclusive horsemanship program in SoCal with her mother, Lori Halliday, Horse and Heart. Man, I need to hear more about learning from your students and stillness. I mean, that sounds, I mean, you just like kind of left me hanging there. I need to know more about that.
First of all, I just have to say that I'm it's a hard introduction to come after Lori's because there's so many important and beautiful and education pieces there that are just so potent. So, but yes, I do want to speak to that. I have really slowed down my whole life in this last year and kind of changed my goals and desires, and it's come very naturally and it's been extremely challenging, but a huge part of that for me has been opening up to being more receptive to others, to being more receptive to what I have to learn in every crevice of my life. And a lot of that comes from moments when I allow myself to not do very much, which is really hard for a busybody and a go-getter like myself. Whenever I find an hour or 5 minutes for myself, I feel like I have to pack it with something, and it doesn't leave space for the growth that is so important for all of us. And especially for me right now, I feel like I'm in a huge transition in my personal development and my business and my personal relationships, and just the way that I look at those pieces and connect with myself and the people around me. But yeah, a big part of this last year for me has really been becoming more interested in the people around me. And I feel like I'm most fascinated with my young students, who are often young women, and the trials and tribulations of their lives and how they overcome them. And I oftentimes find myself learning the same lessons at the same times as them. And it's just astounding to me how intricate and developed they are at these young ages, and that we're really just all on this big journey together, no matter what process you're dealing with at that time. And yeah, so connecting with my students is a big piece of my life. It's a huge joy of my work, and it's something that I don't think I could find anywhere else. And I feel really lucky to have this facility and this place where we do get to slow down and have stillness with the horses, stillness with ourselves, to make the space for those kind of aha moments where we figure out something bigger about the universe inside of ourselves and around us.
Wow. I mean, just hearing that, I think we live in such a time, right, where we don't have much time for like self-reflection and contemplation. We have like, smartphones on us all the time. we are constantly being bombarded by stimulation, right? And so this idea of just like finding stillness and doing that self-reflection, doing that work, and learning from people who may be at different age brackets than you, and learning from people who are at different places than you, I think that is really important. And I think that's what I'm hearing you say, right? Is learning from people who are from all walks of life, right? And trying to keep yourself open to that. Does that sound correct?
Absolutely. It's actually just connecting to a moment I was having yesterday when I was kind of looking at what an introduction for myself would look like for your podcast. And I was reading my bio on our website, and something that I've kind of forgotten is important to me, but that I wrote in there was that I feel like no matter where we're at, we always have something to learn from someone. And I struggle with that as a young teacher, because sometimes it feels like I don't have enough qualification to be edifiable. But it doesn't matter. I have something to give, and I want to give it, and I'm ready to, and I'm going to keep learning along the way. I'm not saying I'm ready to teach forever and I'm all knowing, but I'm ready to share something that I've learned with people. And I think that's important for all of us, because there's this big kind of stigma towards the idea that, you're a teacher or you're a coach, or that you have to have these qualifications to be valuable. And it's just not true. I think everyone has something to learn from everybody.
Yeah, that is beautiful. That is very beautiful. I mean, the best coaches and the best teachers are the ones who have humility, right? And I think that is because of that realization that there's lessons to be learned everywhere, right? And that to me, that makes a lot of sense.
It's almost like these constructs, these ideas around what is valid and how many letters you need behind your name to represent who you are or open certain doors for you. I think those are sort of outdated ways of thinking now. And really what Ella's talking about is the embodiment of where you are now, because we don't have necessarily a whole bunch of promises about what's coming.
Right.
Is really what we have. Like, that's the game we have. Can I pop in for a sec?
Yes.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Okay. I just love what you're talking about, which is that maybe with all the complexity of life and of relationships and of learning from humans and nature and animals, maybe of all of the complexity, maybe some of the answers are simple. Kind of heard you all echoing that, like maybe it's about a slowing down and a winding down. And so there are just a couple words I wanted to look at in the introduction that I thought were fun and funny. And so the kind of training, one of the descriptives is called Equine Experiential Learning. It's also called Equine Facilitated Experiential Learning. There are other veins in the field like equine psychiatrically facilitated, there's all different flavors of it. Psychotherapy, the general idea is that they're all therapeutic, and you kept saying experimental learning, which I love.
Did I say that?
Which is great though, because it is experimental learning. Let's be honest.
Experiential. That is correct. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry about that.
No. It was the universe giving us that piece. Don't worry.
That's the golden nugget, is that it is experimental, right? Yeah. Back to this, just being present with what you know. It is experimental, and that is the experience, the curiosity and the failings and the wanderings. And we know, for instance, like when you do dances you don't know, your brain and your neurons are on fire, literally. And it's cool to do dances, but where the gold is, where you actually develop your mind, your brain, your balance, your learning, is doing the dances you don't know. So I love it. I might have to change it to experimental. I like that.
Oh, man, that's funny.
And then I want to follow one more thread about what you guys were weaving so richly, so quickly. And that is, are you willing to teach what you know? Right. And that was kind of how the whole thing started. Ella was very young and very curious about large animals, and
I had a crazy dinosaur obsession. Let's be real. I watched The Land Before Time like 60 times by the time I was 3.
Yeah, and, those tree stars.
So that very easily translated into horses when I saw horses for the first time.
She's like, well, that is definitely a large animal. I can tell right now. Compared to me at 3, that is like a dinosaur.
Oh my God.
And
awesome.
So I really followed her into those worlds. And then pretty quickly somebody said, hey, we need you to also teach our children. And what specifically she said was, it's a grandmother. Her name's Bella Bonita. And she said, so we have this amount of money and we'd like for you to teach Sophia and Victoria. And they said, you're their teacher. And I said, oh, Bella, I don't even know what I'm doing. We're just learning. I'm not teaching this. Mm-hmm. And she said, oh, are you saying that you're not willing to teach what you know? And hence the rest of all of the things that unfold come out of Ella's love and desire and attraction and magnetism. Then they come out of the question, the invitation, where someone says, are you willing?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to pepper those into that rich entry.
No, I mean, teaching what you know, right? That, that sounds kind of obvious, right? Like on the tip of the tongue, but really it's act of vulnerability, right? It's act of accepting that you may actually know something, right? That kind of having that self confidence, I guess that would be the word. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but that's beautiful, and that kind of ties in with like the topic we were kind of talking about today, right? And that's doing your work on yourself first, right? Is like understanding like what you know and what you do. And I mean, so what is that? How can we figure out what we do know to teach people, So what in your opinion, how can we discover that within ourselves?
By being unafraid of falling down. And for me, that's been just another huge lesson. I mean, now I feel like these last 2 years of really trying to look inside myself and going through some personal and relational challenges, that another huge piece that I've gleaned from all of that has been trying something different when you're presented an option. If you've done it before, if you're presented 2 adventures, let's say, if you've gone on one adventure already, you should always choose the one that you haven't been on. And it just expands your whole being. You're seeing new things, you're learning new things. It's super freaking scary. I'm not saying that that's like the obvious answer, like, oh, I'm going to go climb a mountain today because it just sounds right to me. But that's kind of what I'm saying. And for me, it's been little things, like doing things I've never done before, even like going on a walk for myself, like alone. That's not something I would do. I lean into people. I've always chosen to take somebody with me. And it's a big part of my teaching too, is learning to try things and actually love the moments when I get to fail and I get to find a boundary and learn this is something I don't know. And it's something I get to keep expanding into. And I just think that can apply everywhere, that we get to keep choosing things that are a little uncomfortable. And that's what makes us bigger and better and more experienced and more prepared for something even more uncomfortable.
Yeah. Willingness to like get in the yuck and be uncomfortable and sit in the tension, the not knowing, the unfamiliar. And when several things she said, now I'm like, oh God, I probably taught her that thing, that fear or that worry. And that's true. That's true, right? That's what we do to each other. That's what our parents lovingly did to us. And so we get a chance to kind of pause and slow down and reflect, like, what do I feel? And what, like, I think I'm just going to go do this. Or for me, a big stretch for me is I'm going to do nothing. The woo way, the do nothing way, the rock back, the receive, the feminine. And I'm telling you, there is a deep message in the self-care, exactly what you're talking about, Thomas and Ella, this deep sovereignty of self. Like, what is an edge for self? And for me, it is this like slow down. And it's later, we'll talk a little bit about a training that's coming up. And the whole purpose is to slow down and to become observant and receptive without judgment, to see if we can notice things through a different lens that is more relaxed and more tapped into the parasympathetic system, so that perhaps other things that are right below the surface can appear for us. These unseen or unplanned for feelings, ideas, memories that take us into this huge zone of the subconscious and unconscious, where there is a wealth of all kinds of good and bad things, scary and frightening and delightful and monumental pieces, because mostly we're operating in this culture in our lives with all of our beautiful words that we're, and all of our worlds that are worlding our words. And all of the swords that we use with our words, they're brilliant. They're beautiful. That's why we're talking on your beautiful podcast. So thank you so much for speaking to change and transformation. And there's the whole rest of us, which is not in this zone, not accessed through this channel.
I mean, that is, I completely agree with that, right? Everything you said, you know, what I'm hearing you say is like, you know, going into, you're doing things you're uncomfortable doing, right? For the intent of personal growth, right? With the intent of understanding who you are and how you react with the world, and maybe even sensing things about yourself and other people. Does that sound correct around that assessment?
And for me too, it feels like something I want to be brave and I want to do, because I have a friend who's shown me what it's like to be uncomfortable and to go and try things on your own and to stand up for the moments and the people and the communities that you believe in. And sometimes you have to be brave and do that on your own without any support, without anyone holding your hand. And so for me, it's been a big shift. Her name's Jessica, and she's my very best friend, and she's just a beautiful creature. But it's inspired me to do more things for myself as a representative of something that young women in our horse community look at as a leader. I want to be something for them that is showing up as different and, you know, being okay with not being driven by the schedule and the rhythms and the patterns of what's regular.
This would be a phenomenal person, Jessica Wood, to come and speak with you, because she has tapped into some mysteries about this that are not very present in people, or particularly for what we're feeling in women. And it is a kind of empowerment to have some of her close to nature ways.
Yeah, you should. If you introduce us, we would love to get Jessica on here. That'd be awesome.
Great.
Smells looking and lovely.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, so I guess what advice would you give somebody who is kind of, they're fearful, right? They're afraid. You know, I mean, it's hard to jump off. It's hard to fall off, right? And so what advice would you give someone who's just starting this journey, who's like, you know, they don't feel comfortable with themselves? Maybe they're more extroverted. Maybe they get more power from hanging out with other people. And so when you're telling them to be by themselves and be still, they're just like, are you crazy? You know, you know?
Well, I mean, a huge part of any kind of growth is meeting yourself where you're at. And so finding something that, and this is how we train horses, right? Finding something that works, finding something that's a really small, manageable step in the right direction. So like for me, like I mentioned before, that was like going on a walk by myself. And then that transitioned into being okay with being at home alone by myself. And then it transitioned into being able to go to protests by myself. And it just has to start somewhere that is comfortable, a little bit more. I mean, however far you can stretch, meet yourself there, because that's still moving in the right direction. And I think that's especially important during these times when there are so many huge movements for social justice right now. Meeting yourself where you're at and, you know, just starting to permeate that bubble of uncomfortability is somewhere to start. And if we push down the people who are just starting to put their foot in the water, they're never going to jump in.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up too. I'm kind of curious about that statement. Would you just say not push people back who just put their foot in the water or something like that? What do you mean by that? Just to kind of clarify.
I mean, when I start to see people who oppose my views becoming curious about my views, I want to encourage that. I want to have conversations with them about what that means for them and about what it means for me in a way that is inviting, because I want to invite more of those conversations. I don't want to shut them down and tell them that they're a bad person for having a different point of view than me. I want to explain to them where my compassion comes from, what that means to me. And I think that's the most potent way to start to shift these tides of tension, resistance, hate, is to be willing to really have those face-to-face conversations in a way that's not combative, that's really working towards what your goal is. And most of the time that's hard, because this is an emotional and charged time for all of us, but I think it's really valuable.
And face to face, even this, I mean, we see you there. I have a sense of you. I had a sense of you by the text, by the communications. I had listened to your voice. I had a sense of the tone of your voice. And now, even as I see you more just right now, I'm knowing more about you. But when we're live, like right now next to each other, there's something else going on. And so taking all of these different constructs that separate us, protect us, allow us to hide, buffer our tone, make us feel bigger than we are, whatever they are, and going back into, you know, live face-to-face communications, using the 70% of what's actually being communicated, which is through body language.
Isn't that crazy? Did you know that? We're talking a lot more through our bodies. And so that's why there's so much miscommunication in all this technology, because I may be saying one thing with my mouth, but my body and my energy and the tension and my facial expressions could be saying something totally different.
Happens to us.
Yeah.
We're the closest people to each other in the world. We have the largest text stream of anyone on the planet. We love to talk. Anyway, so, you know, it can be confusing. Like then we slip into a different kind of conversation, and now we're no longer face to face, and it's disjointed, and I don't get it. And the
possibly
timing.
having two completely different conversations.
Yep.
Literally, we know it. Literally, it is not possibly.
And of course, we're not saying that you should risk yourself and try to be face to face and exposing. But just like this, there's opportunities with Zoom. You could take a social distance walk with your mask on. Like, there's plenty of ways to be connecting with people and bringing up these moments. And it is hard. It's uncomfortable for me, even when I'm taken by surprise and I have a friend who brings up something to do with the political climate or whatever, and I'm not ready and I'm feeling relaxed or whatever, but I still have to then permeate my bubble and my boundary and be ready to have that conversation, even if it's not when I want or how I want to, because it is of huge value to me, and it is of huge value to me to be able to share my opinions and my perspectives with somebody who has different ones than me.
Yes. Oh my gosh, you guys are awesome.
You're awesome.
So it reminds me of something what Lori said, living in that tension, right? Living within that tension within different views, right? And then also seeing the humanity within people, right? That kind of came up, right? This idea of, you know, if we're on Facebook, for instance, like for a while there, I was just getting in arguments on Facebook all the time, like back and forth. I was just, and you know, honestly, it allowed me to really physically understand the dehumanizing effect of social media, right? This idea that you can really believe what these extreme posts someone posts, you know, they may just share something and you're like, do you really agree with it? You know, and you get really deep. But, you know, when I'm having conversations face to face, you know, I've been on interviews with like really right-wing people who disagree with me like fervently, but like they end up being friends. You know, I end up having friends that are with people who are like, you know, completely opposite political views than me, right? But that's because of the in-person, face-to-face, seeing their humanity, right? And so I think that is really important. And I'm really glad you guys brought up that amazing topic.
Yeah, I was just reading in an article the other day that the most potent way for somebody who is against LGBTQ rights to start to shift their tide is to have somebody in their family or in their personal life who they connect with who is in the LGBT community. And I just think that statistic is so powerful because it's so true. When you have compassion and love for a person, and then you start to look at the pieces of that person and what that means and how that relates to your views, it can totally change you, because the way that our body language and our faces and our words communicate with each other in real life is more important for most of us than what ideas we have about, or it should be more important for most of us than the ideas we have about what's right and wrong and what people deserve, because humans are loving and humans are compassionate and we want to connect with each other. And so connecting with more people is really like this huge tidal wave that we aren't tapping into, especially right now, because of course we're much more distant than we have been before.
Yes.
But you can find space, and if it's over text, like whatever, like connect with someone, check in with them. And but yeah, anyways, just that statistic was, I think, really of value to me, and I think that applies everywhere.
Yeah, that there can be tipping points, and there can be two spirits or people who can cross the tide or who can cross the divide. And I think often it's people who have some different way where they have sort of been in both worlds, whatever that might be. And I just want to lean back in for a moment to this. In the beginning, Ella was talking about, you know, taking the risks and making connections with people, and also the horses, and also the land. These ways that as we stretch into other kinds of relationships and allowing ourselves to be affected and shaped by other, actually brings a new perspective and a new consciousness, a new kind of lens. It's, no matter what, we're thinking machines, and we're going to be in some kinds of boxes. And all these ways that we get to the edge of what we're thinking and doing, by taking risks, or by doing deep self-care for the sovereignty of your original tones, making a difference on the planet, doing the things you can in your home. All of these things that we do and choose start to shape us like an embryonic field, shaping us into something new. And I guess that's what I really hope for people, is that we can remember that we can reorganize and we can reshape. And I really believe right now, it feels that it's almost necessary to be open to that.
Yeah.
Or maybe get even more entrenched in these old ways that are outdated and aren't working any longer.
Yeah.
This is just making me so excited, and I'm vibing with this. But I just want to add to, like, again, tying back in, meeting yourself where you're at, pushing those boundaries. For me, a big one is that I started smiling and saying hello to every person I saw in the grocery store. And the way no, I'm serious. The way
that's great. That's awesome.
Yes, and the way that changes the energy you're receiving from those people, and the energy you're putting out is huge. And when she's saying all these beautiful, complex things, it really is, again, so simple. Like,
right, it's simple.
It could be as simple as smiling and saying hello to the people you pass on the street.
Literally shape your environment right now. Like, literally
and
change your body posture.
Crazy too. Like,
change your face.
I can't do that, but
tell your face.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. Little things, right? Is that what you just said? Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Take a breath, breathe. Like, literally stop your feet, look around, take a breath. Like, boom, right there. Yeah. Instant change, instant brainwave change.
Man, I'm feeling this conversation. And I kind of want to get your advice on something now. So, like, how would you guys balance this relationship? Because we're talking about, like, shaping our environment, right, to something that kind of resonates with ourselves. But, as a lot of people know, when they're in a relationship with somebody, close relationships, whatever, there's a sense of, like, codependency, right? Like, too much dependency upon another person. And then there's also a thing where it's like a little too independent, right? Also, like, a little too involved within yourself. So how would you balance that idea, those two ideas, right? Of codependency and then being a little too independent? I don't know how else to describe that, but how would you, do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
Totally, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're rocking back and listening into that complex and yet simple paradigm that you're putting out there. Are you feeling something right away?
I could speak, but if you have something, go ahead.
I'm not quite ready.
Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, I feel that for myself in a lot of ways, because it's really just been something very recent for me to even feel like I can survive as a single person. And so I'm talking now romantic relationships, but that's a great example. My mom calls me a serial monogamist. I have had a boyfriend always, and as soon as I don't have a boyfriend, then suddenly my next boyfriend comes into my life. And it's just my pattern. That's the way that I have lived, and that's what feels comfortable. And because something is your pattern and it's the way that it's been and it feels good, does not necessarily mean that it's right. And that's especially hard, right now I'm single, but that's especially hard when you're talking about a relationship that you intend to continue with, that is something that you want to stay in long term, because changing those things really kind of rocks the boat, right? So in those moments when you're realizing, because it doesn't always feel stuck, right? It's just the way things are. It feels regular. It feels normal to be stagnant sometimes. And when you can realize that that's what's going on for you, or when you can kind of start to step outside of your box and look back in at yourself, I think it's important to try to figure out what it is that you want, how it is that you can get there, and then execute it, just like with anything. And I'm not saying that that's easy, like that's super challenging, and it's something I haven't been able to do in a relationship. So I can kind of talk about it and know that if and when I am with somebody again, that's what I would look at.
Right.
But I literally could not find myself when I was with people, and did not find myself until I was not with people.
Yeah.
So that's a big scary thing. And I'm not saying everyone should go and break up with their partner, but I'm saying you should really find value and importance in yourself. And the way that you can do that when you are in a relationship, whatever that may mean, romantically, business, friend, is take care of yourself. Whatever that is, make a list of 10 things that make you feel good when you wake up and get those done, because no matter what, whether you're attached or distant, if you start to fill your bucket back up, you're going to be able to come to the table and create a more copacetic relationship.
Right. Yeah.
So, brush your teeth, floss your teeth, wash your face, put your moisturizer on, do your nails, take a bath, whatever that is. Maybe it's going for a run. Maybe it's falling asleep without washing your face. Maybe that's your self-care. Whatever it is, do the things that feel good for you, because we have to keep working on ourselves to be able to be the kind of person who up levels the person we're with, which is what you want to do. You always want to be challenged by whatever relationship you're in, right? And I've just started this where I'm really realizing that I don't want to be with people who are like me, and I don't want to be with people who are like who I was a couple years ago. I want to be with people who kind of scare me. And my best friend is one of those. Like, she's somebody who I would not have connected with as an old me, and who I would have probably pushed out of my circle. And she's the most incredible human being I know. Like, she expands me in every way possible, spiritually, intellectually, with justice. Like, she's just got her boots on the ground, and she is unapologetically herself. And that's something I want to be too.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Sorry, that was long.
That really helped.
That was perfect.
Really helped to ground it for me too. So thank you. So I'm just going to thread back in that we're looking at what it's like for people who tend, as their body reaction and as their sort of strategy, to pull away and become hyper independent, versus the people who tend to get over enmeshed and be more codependent. And what, if anything, is some way of being that could assist these people in their edges. Right. So immediately what came up for me, and I wasn't sure about why, is this game that we do right away with horses. And all the games, when I say games, the way we play with horses has to actually do with the way horses play with horses. All of our teachers and us have been observing horses and trying to learn how to talk and be like a horse.
That's beautiful.
So that the horses will be like, hey, what's up? Instead of like, get away.
Wouldn't you think that it would be amazing when the horse is actually playing something that's very natural and by herd dynamics inherent for them?
Yeah.
And so we get to see a lot of beautiful pieces of the horse, because we're speaking their language, not trying to teach them a foreign language.
Right? We're speaking their language. And so whether you're on this extreme of the end of how you represent with your strategies, or on the other end, we can look to the horses and see how the base game they do is go towards and go away. Go towards and go away. It has an ebb and a flow that really relaxes them. We as predators tend to go more towards, and we rarely like look away, take a break, go away, willfully be alone. Whatever those ways of the ebb and flow are, again, for different types, could be different things, can get us a little bit to our edge, so that the person who's really vigilantly wanting to just have their solo time is stretching in and out of more connected time. And the person who's just over enmeshed is going for more walks alone and running away to the beach and learning how to be their own person. And it sounds, all these things we're talking about sound simple. Let's be honest, they are simple. And yet they're a little bit challenging maybe in the world to adopt, unless we're willing to really take the risk of doing something simple. So the number one thing that people I'm coaching with and people who are coaching me that we're talking about is a top 10 self-care list. Yeah. And it sounds like it comes from a certain magazine. It doesn't matter. It's so difficult in some ways to get the list. So I'm just gonna, Thomas, I invite you to do it. And when you get yours, if you're open, you can text me and I'll text you mine.
Oh,
we can share that together.
I wrote that down right here, by the way. I wrote 10. I was like, man, that is deep. Because if you could find maybe 2 things every morning,
Yeah.
like, 10.
And it doesn't even have to be a judgmental thing like, oh
Yeah.
shit, I'm at like a 20% today. It doesn't
Oh,
have
yeah.
to be a judgmental thing. And notice if you're like hitting 10 or you're hitting 2. Notice, care enough, manage yourself, be your own secretary who's floating around caring about number 1. I mean, Deepak Chopra, I don't know if you've been watching, but I don't know if he's not sleeping or what, but in the last 24, he's like a light being. He just floats around like Yoda. So in the last day, he did 4 different lives about the divine feminine, about receptivity, about receiving the arts, music, dance, beauty, poetry, nature, all of the divine feminine goddesses, all of the archetypal energies of the divine feminine, and how that is the answer for now, the yin, the receptive. And that is what the top 10 self-care list is about.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I love that so much. That list already brings to me like an idea, right? Of like, what that really does is forces you to really look at you as a person, right? It really forces you to look at what you like and what you enjoy and what like regenerates you and all this stuff. And but that tells you more about who you are and maybe a potential passion in your life, right? That you can follow, right? It really does give you a measurable idea of like where to go. That's really beautiful. That's such a beautiful.
What actually matters.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And what is important that I never get to, like she said, the toothbrushing and the dental flossing, and people are probably like, what? You don't get to that? I don't always get to the dental flossing, but you know what? I would say for the the last 6 months, I do. I've been trying. I've been focusing on it. I bought a crazy amount of different kinds of dental floss thing when I put that on my top 10 list. And now they're just laying all over my bathroom waiting to floss me.
And for me, as like a high pressure, high stress on myself person, I'm having a little anxiety about my own list right now. And just want to say again that the biggest, most important point we can get across here is that you just also have to have space for yourself when it doesn't go well. Because I put so much pressure on myself that when I fail or when I don't get done what needs to get done, then I have so much pressure on myself about how bad I did that I'm never going to do it. Like there's so much trauma around it, I'm never going to do it. So like a huge thing for me is just at every step of the way, no matter how small it is, being okay with myself when my true body, my true energy levels, my emotions aren't letting me get there right then. And that's totally okay too.
I mean,
go ahead. Sorry, Thomas.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, we do have a little trick that I was thinking about that we do to kind of notice that, like when we're stuck and when we're kind of up against something, or it's interesting actually. There can be a desert of inspiration, like you're just at the edge, you've got writer's block, whatever it is, and again, this kind of goes back to the sitting in the tension, like allowing the yuck feels, allowing the stuck feels. And a little magic trick that maybe that I've been playing with is gratitude. And Elle's also reading the book called The Magic by Rhonda Byrne. And this very subtle practices of gratitude, of just allowing yourself, the day one is thinking about what happened the day before, another list, 10, 12 things that you can be grateful for from the day before. And then the next practice is at the end of every day, you find a gorgeous rock that you keep by your bedside.
Yeah.
Look at this gorgeous.
Oh my gosh. Is that a heart shape?
Side note, we're crazy crystal people and we have a lot of crystals.
I used to work at a crystal shop. Is that like, is that like a smoky quartz or something?
It's actually pink amethyst.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's rare. That's awesome.
So get your gorgeous rock, have it by your bed, and then hold it in your hand and thank your lucky stars for a miracle that happened that day. Anyway, there's 28-day practice, and we've been going through it like in a Facebook group now for maybe 5 times. And we connected with the coolest people, and people come in, they come out. And the beautiful thing about being present with your practice, which is what you're doing, which is what we do by sharing our love for horses, And being present with a practice of gratitude in a community, in a group, really keeps me accountable and keeps my focus on the prize and on the beauty and all the things that I have, so that my vibration can shift into the generative, juicy vibration that allows things to emerge and to open and unfold. And it's okay to get compressed. We need to be there. Anything that's birthing is going to get compressed before it comes out. And that's okay. That's okay. And then as we start to crack open to little bits of light, like, okay, I'm just going to take some time for myself, then, ooh, a little decompression happens. Oh, now I think I'm going to have a cup of tea. Oh, God, I love this tea. This is my favorite tea. Oh, my God, look out there. Listen to the birds today. I heard so many people in the beginning of this quarantine for pandemic say, oh, my God, what is happening with the birds?
The birds are crazy.
The birds are so loud. They're not just talking anymore. They're singing. They're doing soliloquies. Like, what are they doing? And I couldn't decide, like, maybe in truth, beautiful things happened on the planet with the elements in such a way that the microcosm of bird life was able to be more free and whatever. But I kind of think maybe we were all just slowed down, listening, actively listening, doing nothing. And we heard birds for the first time in our own neighborhoods where we've lived for decades.
Oh my gosh. See, that is beautiful. I mean, this idea of, for one, like, being stressed. I get stressed all the time about when I make a commitment to myself and I like don't follow through on it. Right. And so my goal is to be making little commitments, right? Little commitments that I don't feel too stressed about. Right. And that idea is really amazing. And this idea of being happy where you're at, it's kind of like being grateful for what you have. I think that makes a profound difference on your life that I think people don't really realize, right? This idea of like being satisfied by yourself and by your life and really accepting where you're at, right? And that's kind of what I'm hearing, like undertone of what you guys are saying, this idea of connecting to that vibration by really being grateful, really doing the things that make you happy in the moment, even if they're not like, you're not being crazy ambitious, you're not going after it, but you're just making where you're at into this beautiful part of your life, right? Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Ooh, yeah,
Yes.
definitely. And like, for me, I find myself in conversations with a lot of these young, driven people just now who are my age, coming out of college. And there's a lot of talk about success and what is success. And there's a lot of boastfulness and, kind of like edifying themselves with a lot of degrees and, oh, I'm doing this now and I have this internship and I'm doing this. And I'm like, and how are you? And are you happy? And do you feel loved? And are you out in nature when you want to be? Are you sleeping? And for me, like, those are things I'm finding of value right now. And I do feel successful right now. I feel like I'm super successful in all the places that really count. And that's maybe not that I have like some big name who I work for or that I'm making X amount of dollars here and there, but I'm really happy when I wake up. And I think that that's something that we can be grateful for. And sometimes I'm not. And that's okay too, because I have the space and the time to keep trying to work on myself. And as long as I have the direction of wanting to keep being more joyful throughout my life, I have that opportunity.
She's also being kind of humble. So later, when you want to ask her, what she's really been up to over the last years, you might be amazed. So.
All right. Well, we're gonna have to take a quick little break here to hear from our sponsors. So we'll be right back in 1 minute.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. So, how you guys want to take a little break, or are you guys good? You want to guys keep going?
I have to pee and do a few things.
I'm gonna fill my tea back up then.
Yeah. Do your thing. Do your thing.
Edit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I cut this little space out.
All right, we'll be back.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Daddy. How's it going? Oh, are you going into work? How do you feel?
Good. I'm going with shielding and
We're in the
armor.
middle of our. Do you have a good mask?
Yeah, we're just doing
Do you have a good mask?
I have to wear an N95 and a cloth on top of it.
Awesome. You have one that's comfortable on the ears and everything?
Yeah, I tried it the other day.
These ones are here trending like this. Can you wash?
You wash this one?
It looks like it.
Yeah, these
I
are
just
all
like
washed.
this one.
These are all washed.
I haven't washed one.
Don't take the super brown one.
No, do take that one. Do it.
No, this one, baby, not the super brown.
Yeah, no, it's just like my unwashed.
Are they?
Oh, good. Andy, did you want to, what about this one? Do you want to have this one?
Dad. Are they bullying you at the office?
No.
Bullying?
They can't even see them. They're all in plastic boxes.
I know. Crazy. I can't believe that. We're gonna miss you. Okay.
Yeah, 95, the doctor does the work.
Mom, can we switch seats so I'm not leaving you left?
That's good.
My body
Yeah,
hurts.
mine too.
Okay.
And swap.
So tell me what happened in the first half.
He's just reiterating.
This is my dad.
Come on over here. He's like, what happened, Thomas?
Hey.
Don't I look like both of them so much?
He's a brilliant musician, and he has, I told you that's his business here in town, and Troy is one of his students, and Troy's been calling him all morning asking when is the interview happening.
Yeah, on Facebook actually, sending me messages.
Just make sure that people know that we're all really famous, you know.
Yeah, I was like,
You two people both know us, so
If you follow Troy, follow us.
yeah, he's definitely my biggest fan since day one, literally. Like, I did this podcast under a different name before, and so I did like, I think 30 episodes till I started Speak for Change, and it was just me. I didn't do any interviews. I was just like talking for an hour, like about crazy stuff, and he would just like, wow, that was really impactful what you said, you know. And I was like going through my own transformational process, right? So I was like just like straight up saying what I believed and, you know, stuff like that. And it's just, I don't know, I appreciate how like supportive he is.
such
And
a
so,
kind person. Yeah.
yeah, and so I appreciate that a lot, actually. It's one of those things where it's easy to take for granted. I think those are the best things that are really easy to take for granted are the things that you have regularly, that you kind of get used to, right? That are, you know, like I get used to Troy sending me a message every morning being like, where's the episode? Or that was an interesting episode.
Oh, yes, and to have supporters, like to have people who are checking up on you.
It's the wind, right? It's the wind
Yeah.
beneath our wings.
Yeah.
This beautiful, it's somebody who's resonating with us.
Yeah.
You tell us when you're ready to get back on, but I just wanted to preface by saying this is interesting because this is just a part of what we do is work with people who are neurodiverse.
Right.
And they are like, well, okay, we can get to this later too, but my dad was undiagnosed Asperger's.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got all these Aspie tendencies. And so we love these people we work with. We like them more than other people. So anyway.
It's like easier for us to connect to them.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's
about Troy. We feel it genetically.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like my grandfather had that, and, you know, I was raised with a lot of crazy stuff. And so Troy is one of my, I'm just super comfortable with it, you know, at this point, you know, I totally understand that. I totally vibe with that. Totally vibe with it. More than you guys could know, you know, so like, yeah.
Well, we'll have to hear about that when he interviews you.
Yeah, that'll be.
Or when you come over, he lives down.
I guess I literally live like right down the street from you guys. Like
maybe we'll walk down and and walk you up, and then you can walk home.
How far are you guys from the bridge from Land of the Medicine Buddha?
Like 12 minutes.
Oh, so I could literally walk to your home. Yeah. Okay.
700
Wow.
feet vertical.
It's vertical. You have to hike up a huge mountain, but
I hike all the time. Yeah.
So we'll show you the trail, and then you can know a cool trail.
Yeah, because I live, you know, so if you just like right where that bridge is, if you just look to the right, that's the property I live on. So I live literally like right there.
You know where the mess hall is, and the little river and the road that goes over the river right there by the
Where there's like the
cafeteria?
keep out signs.
Yes, that I know that.
Straight up.
You go into the keep out signs. It's
Yeah.
our teacher who is kind of wacky, but
Yeah.
you go through there, and then we're the next property.
Oh wow, that's awesome. So yeah, wow, you're just literally we're like in the same neighborhood. Like
Yeah, totally.
Did you hear the gong like at like 7?
every morning. Yeah.
So loud this morning. I was like, hey.
Yeah. Yeah,
Comes right up.
that's hilarious. Yeah, I wake up at 4 every morning, so I end up and then I leave and I come to here, which is I'm at the school right now, so I'm in like Pleasure Point.
Okay.
So I just drive here every morning, so I don't get to hear that gong really, but my wife probably does. But she wears earplugs like all night because she's a light sleeper. And
I know.
Okay.
yeah. All right, so I'm gonna get back in here. All right, in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to Speak for Change podcast. I am with Lori and Ella Halliday. Sorry about that. And we're gonna go into the second part of our interview, which we're going to kind of talk about just general questions. And so the first question I have is, do you have any quotes that you guys live by? You know, Lori, you can go first.
Okay. Well, I have a lot of funny horse quotes that roll around in my mind all the time. And the one that's popping in now is from Pat and Linda Pirelli, which is prior planning and preparation prevents poor results. And the other one is passive persistence in the proper position. You get this? Passive persistence. So stay with it passively, right? Passively stay with it in the right position, in the right place. Just stay with it. Hold, stay with it.
Yeah.
And then the other one I think is from Churchill, which is something about the outside of a horse is good for the inside of a human. Something like that. Okay, that's
those are awesome quotes. I love that. That the second one almost sounds like a Taoist quote, some kind of like, be still and position yourself in the right place, you know. And
horsemanship can really be that. These kinds of ways of listening and stillness that open up something else that is actually a mutual communication, some kind of consensual communication.
And I just want to speak to the importance of this one, passive persistence in the proper position. It has everything to do with horsemanship, and it's about being steady and firm without being emotional about it, and it's about being gentle without being flimsy. It's about holding that container for an animal just to flow right into. And horsemanship is a lot of patience, and that is one of my favorite quotes because I think it kind of encapsulates what horsemanship is about for me. It's really about having that grounded energy and just creating space for the animals because it takes them a little bit sometimes to figure out what you're asking for. But I love that one, and one that I would think of that's kind of in the same vein is take the time it takes so it takes less time. And that's another one that Pat Pirelli has said, who's one of our favorite gurus, but we also have a few others. But apparently he's the only one we know any quotes by.
That's not true. What about Jonathan Jonathan Field? He's like the amazing Canadian natural horseman. Phenomenal human, beautiful family. Shout out to Jonathan.
Like just a golden creature, like so kind, has space and time for everyone to make eye contact and hear your story.
He comes here. When he comes next, you should come and audit and watch.
I will.
And so he's just dropping gold all over the place. He's just like got gold dropping out of him from everywhere. And you're just like trying to take in as much as you can. And then he looks at you and he's like, are you picking up what I'm dropping? Are you bailing what I'm swathing? Are you smoking what I'm rolling for the Californians? That's what he says.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Oh my gosh. I love that. So what is something you believe that other people think are crazy? I think is crazy.
Like about us?
Yeah, about anything. These are like kind of get to know you questions. So it's just
like magic. Like I went to I went to, sorry, let's just jump right in here.
Yeah.
Now these people are all gonna think we're crazy, but we are, so it's okay. So when I was in
it gets weird.
When I was in 7th grade, I got pretty pretty horribly bullied at New Brighton Middle School and ended up switching to Monte Vista Christian, which is a private school back in Watsonville. And they just had a little more structure and containment, and it was super helpful to me in those places. But it's also an evangelical Christian school, and my mom was raised in a very like Catholic witchcraft kind of
The
Catholic witchcraft upbringing.
voodoo.
That makes sense.
We're Filipinas, and there's a lot of spirituality and kind of expansive spirituality. So when I was in 7th grade, I had a friend come over, and it was the first time I had a friend from that school come over, and she came into our living room, and she saw me open our herb drawer, and she looked at me and she was like, "Is your mom doing witchcraft?" And I was like,
It was like cilantro, basil,
Yeah.
stuff from the garden, and some crusty old Ziploc.
And then she looks over our hearth and she says, what is that? And we've got this big green Tara head. And so
she just said, "Is your mom a witch?"
Is my mom a witch? And it's something I was so embarrassed of. I was like, no, of course not. But now I'm like, yes, she's a witch and I am also a witch. So you were right. There were no wrong messages there. But that's I think we're a little more eccentric in that way. Like we're very connected to nature and our spirituality. And I think that's kind of hard for some people to meet up against.
Go ahead.
Even in Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, we find some really interesting people here in Santa Cruz. I'm similar. I'm a very spiritual person. I've like had a really interesting past. When I came into this town, I was, completely on that vein, which is great.
Yeah. Beautiful. Oh, tell us a little bit more. What were you interested in?
Okay. No, it's fine. It's fine. So I've always been kind of interested in like searching for like truth and understanding and spiritual occultness and stuff like that. And so when I first moved here, I lived down in the woods, and so I had like, Larimar crystal. I was all into Larimar for some reason. That was like
I just got a ring that's Larimar.
Yeah. And that was like my stone, I think, for the time, right? I was very emotional. I was really driven by my emotions and my feelings. And so I just really into spirituality. I like went to like kirtans weekly, and I did like a lot of different things. I got really into astrology for a really funny reason. I just got into like pretty much anything you could think about. I've been really into, and I still have a spiritual practice now. I've kind of been more, I feel like my path has been more of figuring out like the physical world, so I feel like when I was younger, I was really like, even in high school, I was like really out there mentally, and I think my path in life has really about grounding and learning how to do like daily routines and like brushing your teeth, right? Or like doing very simple mundane things and finding the spirituality and the beauty within that.
Yes, taking all of those little moments, like opening our pineal gland and actually experiencing what's going on around us. It's so crazy, and the gratitude is a huge way to do that, like just being grateful for the little things. And I find myself now taking moments that previously I would find very mundane and boring, and experiencing them in a whole new light, and seeing the little creatures around me, the bugs in the air and the way the light comes through the trees. And it just totally changes your experience of life when you can find those slow moments and become present to the moment.
When I was living in the woods, I think you guys are gonna like this story. When I was living in the woods, I was camping out. I had to go really far into like Henry Cow, really deep in there, because like if you stay closer to town, there was a lot of like mental health and homelessness going on, and it was really scary actually having to walk through there at night to get to this spot. But I had this spot near the river, and it was like kind of deeper into Henry Cow, off the beaten path, so no one really knew about it. But I remember one day on my campsite, the bottom of my tent was feeling really bumpy, and I was like, oh, what is that? And I like dug a little bit, and I found this big amethyst, this purple amethyst crystal right underneath me.
Oh my gosh, I just got
yeah. And I was like, what is, I was like, oh,
could it be for obvious? It's like, knock, knock, I'm stabbing you in the back.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I'm trying to sleep here. And I had that. I think I gifted it to somebody years ago, but yeah, I thought you would like that story with your
That's so interesting. It gives me chills because when we moved to this property, there was rose quartz buried everywhere, and when we would be digging projects, like big, like 6 to 12-inch rose quartz chunks. And it's just the world, like we're all more connected than we know, and there's magic beneath us even when we aren't sensing it. And like you finding that awareness and taking space and time to yourself to be in nature, it presented itself to you in such a beautiful way. And I think those are just the gifts of the universe, like telling us when you slow down, here, look, here's a beautiful rock. I will give it to you.
This is how far you're going to have to go beyond where you're just sleeping right now.
Yeah.
So, roll over and grab this jewel. Right,
exactly.
Stillness in the dark of night, in a place where you have taken yourself out to the edge for yourself.
Beautiful.
I want to throw something in here about something that's crazy.
Yeah.
So
yes. Yeah. What do you think? People think we're crazy.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
You know, I think that something that's kind of crazy about me, and that's maybe a little overboard, is that I really am a like practice what you preach, and so I do the work, and I was trying to tell somebody all the different ways I was doing personal development work, because that's what all of the teachers and what I say to people and what the teachers say to me is like, do your own work, do your own work. And so I think I might be like a little bit on the crazy realms of just constantly being in that deep reflective work. Yeah. And on the one hand, I know sometimes that's a little bit of me trying too hard, and then I could have just take a nap. And then on the other side, I know that that's just my personal vigilance towards staying with how I personally am responsible, and just my natural strategy is to return to what is my part in it. And that's, I think, from doing work for so many years, is I'm very curious about like, what is my part in this? Yeah. That being said, it is also good to notice in a group like me, a student and a horse, when feelings come up, or in a family dynamic, is that my feeling or is that something else? Ooh. You know, so anyway, these are just different delineations that happen because I know now, and I can say with only a little bit of shame, that I'm like a personal development junkie.
Yeah. No, I'm same way. Why do you think I have a podcast?
Exactly. I just also have to interject that I think in the same vein of what you're starting to say from an outside perspective, another person might call it a workaholic. And that is what I've been raised with. My dad is also like, there's no empty on that gas tank. These two just keep going. And for Lori, it's a little bit more introspective. And my dad's just literally, you can come out at 10 o'clock at night and he'll be out there dragging the arena to fresh for me in the morning. He just never stops. And so that's a big thing, I think, for our family. People probably think we do too much. But also it feels hard not to do too much, and there's so much pressure to do more. And so it's such a fine balance. And again, coming back to just finding space for yourself where you're at and taking those moments. And being raised by two workaholics, I know how hard it is. I always want to keep grinding and bettering myself. I should be taking a nap or reading a book, and I'm cleaning the house. Like
everything is a nap.
I'm a big advocate of naps. You know?
I just might be tired sometimes.
My best friend Johannes, yesterday I talked to him for the first time in weeks. It was weird not talking to him, and the takeaway I have on a sticky note in here that Andy was teasing me about is he's like, you need to follow something on Instagram called the Nap Ministry. It's called the Nap Ministry. I think it's really right for you. It's like, all right, thanks.
What are you trying to tell me? No, that's great. My mother's a very workaholic as well. She's retired, and she is constantly working on her yard. She got a dog. She's training a dog. Incredible. Oh, everywhere we've lived. I've moved so much in my life. Everywhere we've lived, it's like she makes it her home, you know? And so it was just like, beautiful. Transforms everything, but she's totally a workaholic. I totally understand that. All right. So let's see. Who do you think of when you hear the word successful? Either one of you can go first.
I'm going to think.
Yeah.
That's a challenging one for me. Like I meet a wall when you ask that, because it's something I'm continuously redefining. And when I try to look for an example of that outside of myself, of how I'm starting to feel for my own success and what that means to me, I don't know that I really have an example that looks like me, or that feels like me, or that I see is doing the same work as me. Which actually feels a little bit emotional. Like it feels even harder to try to decide what's actually right for me as a person and a business owner. And especially when there's not something that I get to look at and call my own. But that's
well, it's easier if somebody already did it. But if you're kind of out in the front, stepping this way and that way and carving your own place, it's a vulnerable place. It's honorable and venerable. It is a leadership position, and you're kind of a target. You kind of don't have something to follow because you're shaping. You're doing it as you go. You're shaping as you go.
So I could think of like people who I think are financially successful.
It just matters what basically success is relative, right? So it's basically like a personal experience, right? You know, when it just depends if you think of anybody or a thing or, you know, whatever.
I do. So to me, and I heard this in an interview that a man was doing with students in a classroom setting maybe 5-6 years ago. And I've heard Lori Butterworth, who was a leader with hospice in this area, talk about it too, children's hospice advocate. Jacob's Heart. This idea of doing what you love. And it's so oblique. We've all heard it. Do what you love. It's like, oh God, what does that even mean? Like, what classes do I need to take? You know? And so, yeah, it's difficult to know.
Is there a book on that?
Yeah, you know, what did you read? Where did you read that? And so what I like about the idea is to just break it down, slow it down, have it be a little more simple. And you said it a few times earlier, Thomas, go towards what you're drawn to, what you love, what magnetizes you. And immediately the analytical, the critical mind comes in and says, well, I already have a job in this. I'm not going to quit my banking job and become a scuba diver or whatever the thing is, you know? And it's like, okay, well, can you get to scuba diving this year? Oh yeah, I've got that planned a couple times. Oh, okay, great. Go towards that, right? Do the things you love, move towards them. Is that a volunteer job? Is that by reading about it? Is that by dreaming about it? Is that by doing some of it in pieces in a class? Is that by contributing your time, your money, or whatever to it? But go towards the things you love. And what naturally will happen is they'll start to show you their mysteries. They'll start to kind of show you their secrets. And so to me, if I see someone impassioned and emblazoned and boldened doing something they love, I know that they're onto something. And that seems like success to me. And it seems like they're getting a lot of yes, like things seem to open. It's happening for me right now too. Certain things seem to open with a yes. If you see if you can hone in on not what's calling you, like, did you get the call, but like, what raises your vibration, makes you excited, gets you pumped, gives you butterflies that you think about when you're going to bed, or, you know, those things.
And I think that makes my answer a little more clear for me and kind of helps me clarify what I'm thinking about, which is that for success for me, when I look at somebody and success for myself has been when I've been able to make maybe even hard decisions, things that feel like I could be losing a lot, to make the space for something better to enter. Because and that's being uncomfortable again in that kind of in between empty space when you know you have to say no to something. It's not a yes for you, but then what's coming next? But so often if a role is already cast, somebody else isn't going to come in and audition. So we have to get rid of the things that don't work to know what we can let come in that does work. And so I think success for me is somebody who is so true, grounded, and centered in their intentions and their passions that they know how to shed the rest and focus on what really works for them.
I love both those answers. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Amen to the shedding and to the cleaning of house and to the culling of your email list and your Instagram people and your whatever. And it can happen naturally just by speaking your truth. And if it doesn't, I think it's an important ritual to mentally, emotionally, spiritually detach yourself in what ways you can to that is no longer serving. Because as Ella said, something else is waiting to emerge. You know?
That's beautiful. And that reminds me of a analogy my life coach actually gave me. And it's like a rocket blasting through the atmosphere, right? You know, it takes a lot of power to blast through that atmosphere. Right when you blast through, they get rid of all those rockets, right? They get rid of everything. They just drop it off, right? Because it's no longer needed.
I love that.
It was needed then.
Imagery, yeah.
So I love that idea. All right, so let's see. We've got a couple more here, and then we'll go to our 2 silly questions. Let's see. If you had to gift one book, what would it be?
I know, do you know?
Go.
I would gift, and I have many times, and she has also gifted me this book many times, Naked Liberty by Carolyn Resnick.
Okay.
I think it, encourages and gives the space for us to think about what kind of magic can come into our life through that emptiness, through the lack of being and having intensity and having a goal and trying to accomplish it. Just kind of the emptiness and the stillness and kind of that stagnant moment. She's a horsewoman who I very much so admire and is a wonderful guru of mine. She's in her late 70s now and has been practicing longer than most people who are doing any kinds of natural horsemanship. She coined the term liberty work, which is what all of us strive to be able to do, which is work with your horse with absolutely no apparatus. And she did it because she was raised by herself in the desert. She had a family, but she was raised mostly by horses and spent all of her days training. By the time she was 10, she had her first client. And she would spend days going out into the desert and getting to know these wild horses. And so she was one of the first people who really understood herd dynamics. And there's just a lot of beautiful and powerful messages and how to interact with each other and the balance of boundaries and creating flexible boundaries. And it's just presented to you in a really natural and interesting way because you get to see it in this beautiful story of a child with horses.
Oh my gosh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's autobiographical. Yeah. It's in her voice. It's just sweet.
And she's just a really insightful creature. And so Naked Liberty by Carolyn Resnick, I recommend it to anybody, but especially horse people.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
It's a gorgeous female heroine coming of age, right? People are into that stuff. It's really good though, seriously.
She's kind of under-acknowledged, but is just really absolutely a valuable source of information about life. So I highly recommend that book.
Yeah,
That's
if you're
awesome.
for change and you're listening, go get it. It's called Naked Liberty. For real, it is a goodie.
And I mean, with that title, right? Naked Liberty is a white horse with a woman in the nude, in the moonlight, laying back on the horse. It's just stunning in general.
Perfect.
I know I don't want to be monotone, but actually I'm going to also recommend a horse book. So the study that I did a long time ago that's in this therapeutic realm, the Equine Experiential and Experimental Learning, no, I'm just totally joking, and I'm not joking, right? It is experimental. So anyway, is with the teacher Linda Kohanoff, which has a program called Epona Quest, and in her first group of teachers, I studied with one of her master teachers, Catherine Clark. And the first book that they recommended for us to read on the journey, I had read before I even met them, and it was the inspiration for me to go into the soulful aspects and communication with horses, is called The Tao of Equus. The Tao of Equus by Linda Kohanoff. And it reads also for regular humans and equestrians. It reads,
all you non-horse folk.
It reads for the rest of you all and us. No, it is a beautiful book in that way, that because it is the Tao, it is a certain way, a lens of looking at it. It's also, again, for me, I believe it's a coming of age book about a woman who's coming into her own voice about what she actually hears. Yeah. What she actually knows and perceives. So therefore, it's an invitation for people to pique their own curiosity and interest of like, am I hearing something? Am I feeling something? Is it me? Is it you? Is it in a dream? Does this image come for a reason? And just start to move into these, again, that we talked about earlier, these subconscious, unconscious realms of the cool animals that we are. Like, we get to take a look at some point if we do. And this to me is a good like entry level story version way in to another kind of listening.
Oof.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh man, you guys have good book recommendations. I'm gonna have to learn a lot more about horses.
Yeah, it's a way in.
A phrasing that the woman Carolyn Resnick, who wrote the book I was recommending, uses that just applies to what you're saying, is that these books kind of create space for an entry point of connection. Yeah. And that's the lack of having to do or having to train or having to look for something, and trying to find a space where there's actually an opening to thread your way into whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, rather than forcing it or making it happen right now. But yeah, and for her, just an entry point of connection to yourself, the universe, thoughts, thinking about what might be, how you feel.
Oh man, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I think everyone should probably read those books. They sound great.
They're excellent, really foundational ones for us.
Sounds great. All right. So what would you give yourself advice you would give yourself 10 years ago?
Do less. Do less. You're worthy. Charge more. Amplify the things you already love.
That's excellent advice.
Yeah, beautiful. I think for me it might be something to the effect of just dance when you want to dance and express yourself in a way that feels good to you. I think I spent a lot of my younger years, 10 years ago I was in middle school, and spent a lot of my younger years really trying to conform to what I thought I was meant to be. And I had a lot of blonde-haired white girls around me who wore Hollister jeans and tank tops, and I wanted to be just like them, but I had on my, 70s floral sweatshirt with some stretchy pants, and my forehead bangs I cut to be like Zooey Deschanel. And I was always confident. Like, I always made these different decisions, and I was confident doing it. I was like, heck yeah, I look good. Like, I'm ready to slay the day. And I would get to wherever I was going, and it would all go away because it was so different than what everyone else was doing. And it was always made clear to me that it was different. That what I was doing was different than what everybody else was doing. And it kind of
different wasn't good.
It became a vice to that kind of expression, and to that, what's the word I'm looking for? That the quality of gosh, there's a specific word I'm looking for, but just the quality of being unique, like being not on the beaten path, and in these small ways, right? Like as a 13-year-old girl, having somebody be like, where did you get that from? And them being like, oh, I only wear Hollister. And I'm like, oh my God, Mom, coming home, like we need to go to Hollister.
We need these kinds of jeans, these kinds of t-shirts, and these kinds of tennis shoes, and we need to blend.
When she came to pick me up from elementary school, I tell her, please, Mom, just one day, can you please wear some jeans and tennis shoes and a t-shirt? And she'd be in like her cowboy boots and some homemade gacho pants and some beautiful like floral thing with her gypsy earrings and feathers in her hair. And I hated it. It was so hard for me. And now looking back, it's something that I cherish and I think is so beautiful, and I want to aspire to be more like. But I think looking back 10 years ago, I would probably just, give myself a pat on the back and encourage myself to keep doing what was true and congruent for my own desires, and not what was true and congruent for the desires of others.
And I want to just thread in here the genetics and the centuries of patterns here, because I don't know if you know, but my father is a white man and my mother is a woman of color. Right. And so I have this walking between the worlds, experience happening all the time. And I think I heard you in a podcast say you have this too in your family.
Exactly.
A blended family. And really lost my train of thought.
I experience it too. And for me, I think you're just getting to the point, probably, I'm reading your mind, that that it's a challenge to have these kinds of expressions so innately, and to be different in a community that is very Eurocentric. And
right. I know what it is, that I said the same thing that my grandmother said to me. My grandmother, my white grandmother from the white side of my family, said to me, you don't want to look like your mother, do you? And I would say, oh no, like, God, that sounds awful. No, is no the right answer? And I lived in the Midwest in St. Louis, and I would put on my Levi's jeans and my blue Oxford shirt and my Argyle sweater and my tree-torn tennis shoes and call it a day. Because no, I did not want to look like my mother. And so then here we are in sunny California, where everybody kind of looks like a gypsy to me, and here in Santa Cruz anyway. And I'm a dance teacher, I'm a mover. And so, I've got on my like dance pants, but I've, got to run and do something with the horses. So they're jammed inside of my cowboy boot, and I'm looking like a Russian dancer. I don't know. So I can see how it's not normal. But I just wanted to sort of thread in that this conversation has been going on in our family for a while.
Right.
You don't want to look like your brown people do.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Those kinds of micro communications and microaggressions are something that I've experienced a lot and that I have perceived in different ways because I'm very white presenting and until very recently had blonde hair and green eyes. And I was also raised in a family that is not white presenting. And so having, kind of inappropriate racial things projected towards me as somebody who they think is going to be interested in them in a positive way, but also feeling really deeply offended. And in some ways for a long time feeling that was the right way. That's what I learned, that those things about me were bad and those things were things that I should try to compress and hide. And I spent the last 20 years of my life trying to be as white as I could. And I just, you can see, shaved my head, and I'm trying to find what really matters to me, and trying to find the pieces of me that are really natural, that are really in there and like wanting to come out and a little more expressive and a little more gypsy and a little more colorful. And it's exciting. It's exciting to get to look at those things, and I'm grateful to live in a place and a time when I have the opportunity to. But it's also like a little bit sad when I get to look at the past and think about all of the ways that I've tried to hide myself over my past lives that I've lived.
No, I totally relate. It's hard being the other, in any situation, right? And I was raised in Hollister, California, not the clothes brand, but the town.
I like that.
Yeah, which is is primarily white and Hispanic, right? And so I was raised in a white family, but I'm brown, right? And so I've had to figure out how to assimilate with that. So I understand what it means to be the other. And it's only recently till I realized that I've actually felt that way most of my life, being the only brown person in a white classroom in fourth grade or something, and and also being bullied a lot for being overweight. I was an overweight kid. And so both those combined, right? And so that idea of, being the other, I think it really teaches you more about yourself. So I think it's almost a blessing, right? So definitely if you come to the awareness about where you're at now,
that's what people get to look at you and say, wow, what an interesting and beautiful person. They are so different than me. And that's what I want to keep instilling in the children that I work with and the people that I get to share time and community with, is that we get to look at these different pieces of different people and just think every part of it is so interesting. It's not bad because they're not the same as us. If they were the same as us, we'd all be robots. Is that what we want? Or is it actually more interesting when you see somebody who's different than you? And and I just want to say, I feel you, and I have such a different experience because, and it's a little mind-boggling and something I've really been trying to play with and understand for myself and how I feel about it, but I'm a white person raised in a brown family. So you're a brown person in a white family. I've got the reverse effect, and so I'm not experiencing the world in the same ways, but I'm also feeling the pains and the traumas and the deep wounds of my family members who are.
Yeah.
I love it though, that your attitude, Thomas, is cup half full. You're like, so I, struggled with weight as a child. And so now I feel that I have, more perspective, and I have a deep understanding and more sensitivity and compassion. That is you.
Beautiful.
That is what you did with it.
Right.
Bravo.
Yeah.
And by the way, I saw somewhere that you hit some really good health goals. So congratulations.
Oh yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, totally.
30 pounds down.
Wow. That's amazing. You feel liberated and
it feels just this has been a struggle with me all my life, but this moment it feels just it feels kind of mundane because I'm doing it in such a sustainable way, so it doesn't really feel like I'm doing much. And
that's the best though. That's so good. That's the healthiest way to do it.
And so it's since April 4th I've lost 30 pounds, and it's just mostly based on I think just real realizations that have happened in my life about my life, not just ideas, because I've had ideas all my life, right? I'm a very philosophical dude, but real realizations of these cliche concepts, right? Because cliche concepts I think share with us wisdom, right? Because they're things that we take for granted. These phrases live, love yourself, these things like that. We're okay, just be yourself. Yeah, do what you love. Exactly. Yeah.
Like, what does that mean? Who am I? You said I'm this, but I'm kind of feeling like that. Yeah.
Right. And those are the great questions to ask yourself. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Those are the great questions to ask yourself, and to be authentic, right? And learn what that means for yourself. You know, tear off all the conditioning that your parents have given you, your social life has given you, and, you know, being who you are. Right. And so I've been just realizing, I think, fully these concepts recently. And I'm 28 years old now. So it took a while for me to really comb through all that stuff.
It's very interesting. I often find that when in personal and emotional and mental liberation happens, people find ways to change themselves physically that don't feel as you're saying,
Right.
dramatic or like much is going on,
Right.
but that are shifting the outside of your body from the inside out. And for some people that may mean gaining weight, for some people it may mean losing weight, for some people it may mean cutting their hair, for some people it may be growing their hair out, but that when something's going on inside, it usually just happens to show outside, and it looks good on you. Like, it usually looks pretty beautiful when there's some growth inward and it sprouts out of your real skin suit.
This
Right.
is the shaping, and this is the cauldron. It's like you're cooking something, and it can't be the same. It can't look the same, feel the same. It's just not the same anymore.
Right. And I think it, you know, it is accumulation of like past too, you know, your whole life, right? Because you know, these concepts I've been struggling with probably since I was like 17 years old, right? A lot of these concepts, and it's just now, like about 10 years later, where it's been like, oh, you know.
How I feel about my mom. Like,
Yeah.
everything she said was the deepest river ever.
Mhm.
Like, all the silly things, everything she said came to be. Every strange remedy she had turned out to be a modern miracle of medicine. You know, like every single thing. And so this is kind of what I hear you saying. It's when you slow down enough to sit with the feeling and the meaning behind these deep questions.
Yeah.
And go into the woods or go into the water or go where you go to be still and see if anything's bubbling up.
Yeah, it just took 10 years.
You're on a slow cooker.
It's hard. I feel it even now.
You're
Like,
ahead.
just when you ask me questions, like, I just have to have an answer right there. And that's a huge, I think, analogy for everything, is that we're asked a question and we feel like we need to answer it right that moment. And we should have an answer, and that's what we're supposed to do. And sometimes I just need to sit for a second and think, like, what is my actual answer to that question? And it's so inherent in us that, you know, I'm feeling it right now, just in a regular conversation. That's where my mind goes. That's where my body goes. And usually the first answer isn't the right answer for me.
No. Yeah.
So
I completely agree.
that to be wrong. Yeah.
But sometimes that's different for somebody else, where they have to literally trust the first answer. So it depends on your strategy and your type. And I want to throw that in that I recently popped open the human design. Do you know your human design?
I do. I'm a 1/4 projector.
Oh, wow. I'm also a projector. Only 20% of humans are projectors.
Yep. So is my wife. She's a 4/6 projector.
I'm only 1/5. I think
she's a 1/5
generator.
So there's some profile similarities. Yeah. So I'm just brought that up, and there's so many good ones. The Enneagram, you know, the original Myers-Briggs. I recently did the 34 Clifton Strategies.
I haven't heard of that.
Check that out, Clifton Strategies 34. And for listeners, if you're curious about the human design, there's a free quickie you can do at joviandesign.com, something like that.
Yeah, Jovian Archive.
Yeah, and that's just a quick, easy way in. But right, the way we process or bring something through, or the way we sit with what it is that's true with us, or the parts of us that are innately sovereign and authentic to us, that are defined, as they would say in the human design, or the parts that are undefined, right? The parts of us that kind of stay open and are not maybe as well regulated, and how we'll manage those. And so I think that's why I'm a personal growth junkie, is that I really want to throw a girl a bone. Yeah. I really want to have some assistance for myself when I look at strategies. Like, I just found out that, speaking to what Ella was speaking of, taking time for a decision, I just found out that even though I'm a really quick, decisive decision maker, I must have trained myself to do that. The truth is, how I feel and how I operate best is when I have 24 to 48 hours.
Your emotional being.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so now I'm so curious about that. And I'm kind of like, I'm going to sleep on it. I'm trying
Yeah.
that on people. Yes, thank you. I'm going to sleep on it. I don't quite have it. It's not a strong muscle, but I'm trying it because I know a little more about myself.
Yeah.
And that if we could be more curious about ourselves, it might give us cues and, show us secrets about how we could serve ourselves better as we go forward. And as we are, for me, I would like to have about 10 less Groundhog Days in my life every year. And so it takes a little work to figure out what that is and how to shape that.
Yeah, the one thing about human design that, because this is what you're kind of throwing in these key words that they like, they throw around a lot, and is that it really trains you into seeing the little subtleties of every behavior that you do. So for instance, like, you're talking about being an emotional being, right? Having your emotion center defined. And so when you make a decision, you need to, defined, and then you need to wait on it, right? Let your emotions go up, let your emotions go down, wait for the calm, right? And then, if you're like a spleen or intuitive defined, right? You have to be in more in the moment. So it's just understanding these strategies, even if human design, I'm a very skeptical person, just throwing out there. Even if human design is not even a thing, the idea that we all respond differently and that we have extreme amounts of diversity is a really good reality to understand, because it's to understand ourselves.
Be curious about, and to maybe even take it a step farther and be curious about your partner, or be curious about your daughter, or be curious about your whatever.
Exactly.
And just see if there's anything that's true for you there. I'm not saying this is, a religion. I did think it was uncanny and correct, just for the record. And so could be helpful.
Yeah, no, definitely. It is extremely uncanny. I studied it quite a bit in my youth. I went to Sedona and interviewed all the people who were like really high levels in it. Yeah, it was really interesting. I could talk about that later.
Yeah, we're going to interview you later about this.
I have a really weird history. But yeah, so here are the two questions I'll ask at the end. What is your astrology sign, and do you resonate with it? And what is your power animal?
You go.
Go first.
So I'm a Taurus, and I'm like the most Taurus. Like almost all of my houses are also Taurus. So I do resonate with it. I think I'm loyal to a fault, which is one of the greatest characteristics of a Taurus. I don't like change very much. It's a big challenge for me. I feel very grounded in my own natural body. Like I have 4 feet on the ground. I'm totally an earth sign. And yeah, most importantly, I think that what I resonate with as a Taurus is like the sensitivity and the connection to nature and the loyalty. If I give myself to you, whatever that may mean, I'm going to stick by you through and through. And relationships are really important to me, and I don't have a lot of really important relationships, but the ones that I do, I really connect with. But I'm also year of the tiger, so I have like a little bit of a fieriness, and I can be very assertive. And I think something that's very different about us, she's a Pisces and so she's a water sign, is that I have a lot of boundaries, and I am very clear with my intentions and not always functioning on such an emotional level. So she's a little more fluid and I'm a little more steady. And there are so many beautiful pieces to all of that. But an animal that I resonate with is also my year sign, which is the tiger. And I feel like as a woman, the prowess and dignity and ferocity that tigers have is something that I relate to, and having that little bit of fire, because as a Taurus, I'm just very steady and pretty mellow and kind of like to look about myself. But I'm also sensitive and emotional, and so I connect with that in some ways of feeling a little bit more ferocious. Like when I'm mad, I can get really mad, and I have a sharp tongue, and I know how to hurt people. Just to follow myself really well there for a minute, but it's true, and that's where I go. And when I'm happy, I'm just a butterfly floating on a cloud. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah, and true. That's true. So I'm a Pisces, and yes, I am very watery, and I can have kind of like dual natures, like be strategic and also be flow. So I relate with that. And I relate with the way that's characterized also through the astrological markers for birth and time in the human design. Also in the Enneagram, I'm a 4, which is the romantic, another feeler, heart type. You're probably feeling me already. I'm a big old heart type. And then I had a couple things come in right here for spirit animal. Number 1, white buffalo calf. Number 2 just popped in unexpectedly, black jaguar. And it feels to me that's because I've made some commitments to enter into shadow work. And ever since I put that stake in the sand, it's just like a shit show. It's like all this great work is coming up for me, for my cohorts, in our partnership, in my relationships. Like all this good work is just up because I said so. Yeah. And if you bring it forward and you say so, then you are invited to embody it and to do the work and to be the work and to be the chalice for the work. So I think that's what my black jaguar might be doing with me. And then my other one is beautiful black dark horse, and that's the training that we're doing is called Dark Horse Before the Dawn. And in the Jungian work, they call that the divine feminine that I was talking about earlier, that Deepak's really sharing fervently about right now, that's what's needed, that is the answer, the receptive, the art, the music, the nature, the beauty, the relaxation, the nap ministry, the way, the woo way. And so the dark horse for me is really present. Again, it's shadow work, and to finalize what I was saying about the Jungian piece, that it's women's consciousness rising. Holla.
Oh man, that's wonderful. All right, well, that's the end of our show.
I'm a little self-conscious about my answer.
Wait, why are you self-conscious about your answer?
I just feel like it was a little bit too mundane.
Oh my God.
Compared to your mother's answer?
I'm like just barely can stand near the radiance of this one, and that's what he thinks is happening.
I'm like, I can't think of any words that make any sense at the moment.
Oh man, that's awesome. That's awesome. Your answer was great. Your answer was great.
You're great. Everyone's great.
Yeah. All right. People who come on, Pat and everybody, Faith, loving all of it. Just thank you so much.
Yes,
no problem.
For just putting yourself out there. This is something so huge, and for me, it sounds scary. Like so challenging to put yourself in front of people and to let them hear your voice and to seek out others. And there's so many ways that we can get knocked down. So thank you for being willing to just risk yourself and put yourself out there to speak for what matters.
I appreciate that. I mean, this is, like I said, this has been a vulnerable journey for me, so it's like completely like comfort zone, no longer really, but that's just because this is my path, and so I know this is my path. And so I have a confidence on it that I just know I'm doing the right thing. So
well, congratulations. It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful just like it is. It's not missing anything, not one iota.
Oh, I appreciate that a lot. All right. Can you guys leave us out with something? Either some words of advice for our listeners, or, maybe you guys are doing a program you guys want to share, maybe throw in your business name in there, whatever you want.
Yeah. So just again, I'm Ella and this is Lori. She's my mama. She's been a great teacher of my life and somebody who I've learned with horses for so long. I've had to leave and go learn with other people, completely put aside what her values are and try to find my own. And after a long journey of trying different things and seeking out my own desires and falling on my butt, figuring out what really doesn't work also, I'm super joyful and happy to be back at home at my family's ranch working with her. And it's just, I think, a beautiful story of having to kind of find yourself and individuation, and really in the end realizing that exactly where I want to be is here with her doing our work together. And I hope that if anybody's curious about us, you'll find us online. We're called Horse and Heart. We do everything from just groundwork, therapeutic work, all the way up into jumping. I teach mostly English, but we do a little bit of Western. That's more on her side. And I'm also happy to teach that too. But anyways, Horse and Heart, our website's just horseandheart.org, and check us out. If you haven't heard of us, feel free to message us on Instagram. We super love to get to know people in the community. And she has an upcoming training going on that I'd love for you to just pop in here and talk a little bit about.
Yeah, I do. And I want to say about Horse and Heart that when you search that, it's a nonprofit. So it's at horseandheart.org. And I have another website that's going up right now that has some other offerings to do with coaching and women's journey work and fempreneurs. It's called wisehorsewoman.com, wisehorsewoman.com. We would love for you to follow us. Horse and Heart is on Instagram, also on Facebook. Wise Horsewoman is also on both. And you can follow us personally, feel free. And yeah, I wanted to say about this training, Dark Horse Before the Dawn, that because it is a call in a time of so much conflict, it filled so quickly. Both 2 sessions filled completely. They're full now. So we're pointing our arrows towards the winter, and I haven't really talked to Ella about it yet, so this is just, I'm going to just spring it on her right now, that I'm dreaming that Ella and I can do this next piece together here in Santa Cruz, where we host women of color.
We'll speak just to a little bit more what it's about too. All those pieces were really good, but it's about,
give it to him.
It's what I understand it to be is it's a program that's going to help women of color and women not of color express what they're feeling, where they're finding internal biases, how they're feeling affected by the social climate, the climate of our justice system, and expressing that through art so that it doesn't have to be something harsh and rigid and you don't have to say it out loud or say it wrong or say it right, but actually just expressing what it looks like to you through creation and creativity. So there's going to be music and collaging, all kinds of different expressions.
It's really, thank you, Ella. It's really for weaving in the actual ways that it looks, because it's a reflective process. Spoiler alert, the whole thing is about training to do active listening. To literally become still in many ways that we show and share together live on live calls, Zoom calls together out in the field with the horses. It's gorgeous. Like your whole system just starts to melt when you see them out there.
Yeah, thank you.
And we access these parts of the body and the system in order to, as I have mentioned in the previous podcast, to relax the parasympathetic system in such a way that we can be present, feel what's next, see something through the lens of simple observation, not I see this and I make this up about it, so that we can simply perceive things. And through that journey, things start to bubble up. Other feelings, other ideas, other memories about ways that we have experienced some of the contextual things that are happening in the world right now. So without pointing necessarily so directly at them in a clinical Western way, we're going to swim in the water with them and see if something emerges through another channel, art, the feminine, the divine feminine, as a way to express something that might surprisingly be universal or be easily understood without all of the stuff on it. And we hope that this clarifies for the first groups that we brought in are powerhouse, heart-centered, white, influential women. It's being hosted by 2 women of color, Jamila Jackson and myself, Lori Halliday. And we're going to hold that container for these leaders who we love. There are 4 white angels in the container who are there for therapeutic discovery and redirection twice a week for the entire 5-week series for the process. So it has all these beautiful structures and containers to keep it really clean. And it's going to be a very rich, natural, authentic, live presentation every week.
Beautiful. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I hope a lot of our listeners go to it and sign up. And what is it? What's the website again? Just to throw it in there one more time.
It's horseandheart.org.
Perfect.
And thank you for explaining that. I really had no idea what the details were, so it felt very comforting to try to be like, I think they're going to do some collaging.
That is it. That's
Okay.
exactly it. We're going to find, well, we're not going to, we're going to let people
Mhm.
find their way to express whatever that is, other than responding to somebody's thing on Facebook in a monologue.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
We're going to see if we can take a different channel.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Appreciate it.
And this has been Speak for Change podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Pedersen. Our mission is to inspire and promote self-awareness, self-development, social justice, and human greatness. Thank you.
Thank you so much.